This is my house now. No entry for unrelated outsiders, you presumptuous old hag. The man in front of me began to scream at me like a child in elementary school, yelling at me to leave. I had endured it all this time, but his remarks, even from a stepson, were unforgivable. Understood. I won't live here. Hearing this, Jason seemed delighted, as if he had won an argument. His mood visibly improved. I then returned to my car, took out my smartphone from my bag, and made a call. Hello. Actually, I have a favor to ask. The person on the other end of the phone seemed genuinely surprised by my words. Indeed, my proposal was quite unconventional. I felt sorry, but I had no intention of changing my plans. I overrode the opposition and asked for something outrageous. It was a revenge plan against my ridiculing stepson, Jason. By using that, I could certainly give that man a taste of his own medicine. My name is Sandra. I have been working at the company for many decades. My role is that of an executive secretary, supporting Howard for many years. He is a self-made businessman, highly respected in the industry. Howard once married in his 30s, but his ex-wife, fond of adventures, left their son and a divorce note to elope with another man. Hey, Sandra, our association has become quite long, hasn't it? Seated on the large leather chair in the CEO's office, Howard casually started the conversation as I brought him a coffee. Yes, that's right. I was quite green at the beginning, but you have trained me well. We had those times, didn't we? Now, you are a seasoned veteran, working hard as the chief of the secretarial office. What's with the sudden praise? Flattery will get you nowhere, you know. I chuckled as I placed the coffee on his desk. However, he looked at me seriously and said, Sandra, would you marry me? What? Why so suddenly? Surprised by the sudden proposal, I asked him in return. Actually, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I was too busy with work to even consider marriage before. But now that we have dependable employees, I hope you will accept my proposal. His expression was earnest, clearly not joking. Taken aback by the sudden proposal, but attracted to him for a long time, I decided to accept his confession. As I nodded, his worried expression brightened immediately. That's great. I was worried you might refuse. Let's be together for a long time to come, Howard said with a shy smile. Thus, we registered our marriage and officially became husband and wife. I have been devoted to my career, so it's embarrassing to say, but it was my first marriage in my 50s. I felt inferior because someone of Howard's status could have married a younger, more attractive woman. However, he always dismissed such concerns with a laugh. But there was someone who disliked me. Jason, Howard's son from his previous marriage. Now an adult, he had joined Howard's company. Expected to perform well initially, Jason's reality was far different. He wasn't keen on working, and often boasted, "I am the president's son," to his colleagues. As a result, Jason was poorly regarded within the company, worsening the office atmosphere. During meetings, he would ignore others' opinions and speak selfishly, causing his colleagues to resent him increasingly. At that rate, Howard's only child, Jason, incompetent, would surely inherit the company ineffectively, causing the executives to worry about the future. Thus, Howard often admonished him. You need to be more aware of your responsibilities as a future executive. Howard had earned his employees' trust as the founder. But Jason's attitude threatened to undermine his efforts. Yet, each time, Jason would laugh and reply, "I understand," showing no signs of maturing. Instead of working, Jason enjoyed nightlife, especially visiting bars. He seemed smitten with a worker at a nightclub. frequently contacting her and lavishing her with expensive gifts. When will he ever start working properly? Perhaps I was wrong in how I raised him. Howard occasionally lamented his son's upbringing. Don't say that. He's an adult. His misconduct is his own responsibility. Don't blame yourself too much. I comforted my husband, reminding him that after turning 20, one has ample opportunity to reflect on one's character. However, as the saying goes, a parent's love is often unappreciated. Jason continued to act selfishly. Hey, old lady, aren't you leaving my dad yet? You're such a shameless woman. Dad should have married a younger one. What did he see in an old lady like you? As I passed Jason in the company hallway, he would always sneer such insults. It seemed that even after marriage, as I continued to work closely with Howard, Jason found my presence bothersome and hurled insults whenever possible. You money-grabbing witch. Just disappear. You're an eyesore. I don't know how you wormed your way into Dad's favor. But once I'm president, you'll be fired immediately. His words were cruel and merciless. With a nasty smile, he walked away. It was always like that whenever I met him. All I could do was hold back my tears. Jason's verbal abuse had become a routine ordeal. Jason's hypocrisy lay in his behavior. He acted like a perfect son in front of Howard but attacked me when we were alone. Despite being family by marriage, I wanted to get along with Jason. However, no matter how much I tried to bridge the gap, he seemed to dislike me. I considered discussing Jason's verbal abuse with Howard but decided against it, fearing it might strain their father-son relationship. Instead, I tried to ignore Jason's actions. But this probably irritated him even more. Our relationship seemed to worsen over time. Then one day, an irreparable rift occurred between Jason and me. I was visiting a suburban property with Howard that day. I can't wait for our new house to be built. Yes, I'm looking forward to it too. Maybe we'll get a dog after we move. You like dogs, right? Then we'll have to walk it together every morning. It might be good for our lack of exercise. We were dreaming about our future home on that empty land, holding hands. This time, discussing our dreams with my beloved husband. Felt precious and joyful more than anything. As we stood side by side looking at the location of our future home, fantasizing about it, Howard's phone rang. Sandra, I'm sorry. It looks like I've been called back to the office urgently. Can you handle the house meeting? Yes, I understand. Leave it to me. Howard had to return to the office due to sudden work. I stayed to finish discussing with the construction staff and planned to go back later. After finishing the meeting, I was about to leave when an unexpected person appeared. What a waste of a large piece of land. This must have been bought by Dad, right? Jason was there, grinning alongside a young woman unfamiliar to me. It's none of your business. What are you doing here suddenly? None of my business? That's not true. Eventually, I will inherit Dad's fortune. This land will be mine, too. Once I become the president, an old hag like you will be the first to be kicked out. Look forward to that. So the company and this land will be yours? Wow. The woman beside Jason, Megan, seemed impressed. She was wearing a mini skirt, showing her long slender legs. Her outfit and heavy makeup revealed that she was clearly from the nightlife industry. Likely a worker from a nightclub Jason frequented. He was probably boasting about being the president's son to impress her. It's a huge piece of land, right? A nice mansion could be built here. Dad has the money, so you can look forward to it. I was furious at their presumptuous talk but decided to ignore them. assuming they were just boasting. However, the situation was about to take a drastic turn. It was discovered that Howard was suffering from progressive cancer. "It seems I will leave you first. I'm sorry we won't be able to live together in that house." Howard, weakened by the side effects of the medication, had become frail. Holding my hand with his bony fingers, he looked so fragile that all I could do was cry. I tried to muster a smile through my tears, but the sadness overwhelmed me. "Sandra, thank you. Having you in my life made me truly happy." Despite desperate treatments, Howard passed away 3 months later. It all happened so quickly. We had just been talking about living together in our new home. The life we dreamed of spending together in that new house felt painfully distant now. While I was devastated by the loss of my beloved, someone else was rejoicing: Jason. Upon his death, Jason was to become the next president. "Finally, my time has come. Now I can do whatever I want." But Jason, who had always been unserious about work, was ill-prepared to manage a company, leading to considerable confusion within. The atmosphere in the office turned tense, and the employees were perplexed and anxious. The executives warned Jason that continuing like this was not acceptable. But he wouldn't listen to their concerns. Instead, he threatened to fire anyone who dared to criticize his management style. Disheartened by his response and having respected Howard since the company's founding, the executives decided it was time to part ways with the company. "How can we work under such a reckless man? If only the former president were still alive. It wouldn't have come to this. This company is finished." Unable to tolerate Jason's tyranny, many employees left. I couldn't stand it any longer and decided to confront Jason directly. "Please stop alienating everyone. You don't understand how much Howard cherished this company. Listen to your employees." In the president's office, Jason sat arrogantly in the leather chair Howard had once used. "Huh? What are you still doing here? And who are you to speak to the president like that?" "I am the executive secretary. My role hasn't changed, even after the former president's death. If you continue this tyranny, I cannot remain silent." So arrogant. A secretary is just a coffee server. I don't need you, so why don't you quit? I don't need a nagging old hag like you in the company. It's annoying to have someone like you around. He told me to leave the company. Understood. Then, a final piece of advice. A child like you is unfit to be a leader. You better hand over the presidency to someone competent. Otherwise, what, old lady? Sore loser? Stop it. It's pathetic. You can't do anything anyway." He laughed off my warning. Seeing his attitude, I realized he was beyond help. Silently, I left the president's office. After resigning from the company as I was told to, I decided to take it easy for a while. I wanted to immerse myself in memories of Howard, who had passed away. One day, I received a phone call. It was about the new house Howard and I were supposed to live in. It was almost completed, with the funeral and subsequent procedures. I had completely forgotten about the new house, but I decided I must go see it once it was finished. I drove to the location where our new home was built. However, the person I was supposed to live there with was no longer in this world. The thought made my heart ache. When I arrived at the new house, Jason and his girlfriend Megan were there. "Hey, why are you here?" That's my line. "Why are you here?" It's obvious, because this has become my house. No entry for unrelated outsiders. You presumptuous old hag. Don't come here. Jason, to my dismay, began to scream at me like a child in elementary school, telling me to leave. This house was built by Howard. I remember discussing various things with Howard while designing this house. The house had a study to house all his favorite books, and a large island kitchen where I could indulge in my cooking hobby. But now that Howard was gone, living in the new house we had planned together might be too painful. Perhaps it would be better if. Understood. I won't live here. Are you happy now? I firmly told Jason, who kept shouting for me to leave, that I would not live here. I wanted to end the dispute over this house with the man in front of me. Well, that's very understanding of you. Then hurry up and go somewhere else. And don't ever come back. Jason grinned triumphantly, seeming pleased with himself. As if he had won an argument, and was quite elated. Turning my back on him, I began to walk away. Then, back at my car, I took out my smartphone from my bag and made a call. Hello. Actually, I have a favor to ask. The person on the other end of the phone seemed genuinely surprised by my words. Indeed, my request was quite unconventional. I felt sorry, but I had no intention of changing my plans. Despite the opposition, I asked for something outrageous. It was a revenge plan against my ridiculing stepson, Jason. A few days later, the day to hand over the new house arrived. But as I had told Jason, I had no intention of going to the new house. I already knew there was no need. While enjoying a leisurely cup of coffee at home, my smartphone rang. I knew who it was without looking at the screen. It must be Jason. Hey. You. What's going on? Jason's voice was clearly panicked. He seemed very flustered. What's the matter all of a sudden? You and I are strangers now, aren't we? Please don't contact me casually. It's your doing, isn't it? Why is the house being demolished by a bulldozer? Oh, you went to the house, did you? How is it? It's been cleaned up, hasn't it? Completely back to bare land. Just like it was originally. By now, the place should have returned to being just an empty plot of land. Of course, I had orchestrated that. Don't mess around. I inherited it. It's my house. The new house we just built. What are you thinking? Jason couldn't comprehend my actions and was furious. I continued calmly. Well, there's no one to live there anymore, and it wasn't needed. What? I'm still here. Megan and I were going to live there together. You seem to have misunderstood something all this time. But that land is mine, you know? So it's impossible that everything would just be handed over to you. What? What do you mean by that? What is that supposed to mean? Haven't you realized it yet? Let me tell you. Actually, I revealed to the furious Jason that the land was not in Howard's name but in mine. Originally, the land was owned by my parents, and I had inherited it. But, the money to build the house came from my dad. The land may be in your name, but the building is my dad's. You can't just demolish it like that. Unfortunately, the building is mine too. Howard and I decided to put both the land and the house in my name. Actually, that house was planned under the premise that I would live there with my elderly parents. Something Howard was aware of. Before he passed, Howard had transferred the ownership of the building to me. Thus, it was unrelated to his estate after his death. In other words, both the land and the building were mine. Unaware of this, Jason, who claimed everything of Howard's was his, was pitiful. That's why. If I'm not living there, I'm free to demolish the house or sell the land. If that's the case, you should have said so earlier, you old hag. Don't mess with me. On the other end of the phone, Jason was furious. Behind him, I could hear Megan's voice. What? So we can't live in this house after all? That's so boring. Wait, hold on. This is absolutely not right. I will definitely get it back from that old hag. Jason was desperately making excuses to her, but it seemed she was angry and left. Wait for me, Megan. It's your fault, you made her run away. Then, Jason misdirected his anger at me. It's your fault, you made her run away. However, I was not concerned. Tired of the conversation, I unilaterally hung up the phone and then blocked his number. Jason's downfall thereafter was quite tragic. Since he took over as the second president, the company's performance significantly declined. During Howard's time, the executives and I had built relationships with various business partners. But Jason, having taken over as president, ousted the executives as well as me, quickly losing credibility with those partners. Then, an incident occurred that would worsen the company's management further. A young employee, part of Jason's entourage, was discovered embezzling company funds. Eventually, after taking over his father's role, Jason managed the company for less than 6 months before it fell into financial difficulty and abruptly went bankrupt, burdened with significant debts. He is now reportedly being hounded by creditors and unpaid employees. However, that had nothing to do with me anymore. Or so I thought, until Jason somehow found out where I live. Ambushed me as I was about to leave my apartment. Mom, please. Hide me from them just for a while. Look at me. If it continues like this, everything will be taken away. It was almost laughable to be called Mom so insincerely by someone who stubbornly referred to me as an old hag. He must be truly desperate to plead to the woman he used to despise. He repeatedly pleaded, kneeling on the ground, in full view of passers-by. What a turn of events, from someone who had once targeted me as his enemy. While I did feel pity seeing him like this, there was no compassion in my heart to hide him. However, an idea struck me. If you're in such trouble, I'll call your real family for you. Huh? What do you mean by real family? Ignoring his confused expression, I called someone. Fortunately, she was nearby and agreed to come over quickly. Good for you, now you can get along with your real family. An older-looking woman soon appeared. She embraced Jason, exclaiming, I'm your mother. In fact, at Howard's request, I had previously hired a detective to locate Jason's biological mother, Angela. When I informed her about her son, she expressed a desire to meet him. However, I knew it wasn't out of maternal affection but because Angela, who didn't work, wanted to sponge money off her real son. Take good care of her, since you're blood related. Hey, Jason, where do you live now? How much do you earn? Hey, let's live together. Angela bombarded him with questions with overwhelming intensity, causing a terrified Jason to flee from his own mother at full speed. Wait, don't run away. I won't let you go. What will become of him? It's no longer my concern, but surely a hellish life awaits him. Later, Jason declared bankruptcy and ended up penniless. Having nowhere to live, he tried to rely on his girlfriend, Megan. But she had long since moved on to another man and apparently married someone wealthy. When Jason confronted her, he was met with the police and reluctantly gave up. He started job hunting to earn living expenses. But his high pride and slow learning ability hindered him, and no job lasted long. He's said to lament his situation to those around him, wondering how he, a former president's son, ended up like this. Ultimately unable to secure a decent job, Jason now lives meagerly on welfare. But even the little money he receives is reportedly being siphoned by his mother, Angela. Meanwhile, I decided to use the money from the sale of that land to buy a barrier-free, single-story house. It's not luxurious, but I live peacefully and happily with my elderly parents. The house I intended to share with Howard will now be carefully preserved only in my memories.